to be honest, I've got to be honest, I actually didn't want to do his book. I'm a mum to 2 young children, and that's what I was content doing. But I had a call from the publisher, who I've worked with before, and he said, look, we've got this amazing guy, fantastic story, but he needs somebody to write it. And I really believe that there's no way I could be the right person to do that. But he's, after a while, he said, well, just come and meet Tony and see what happens. And that's what I did. We met, and he shared something of his story, just a small part of it, some of what you'll hear tonight. And I was just so compelled by it, and I thought, if God allows, then it's going to be a huge privilege to work on this project.
How did you pull back from the gruesome bits, the really brutal bits in the book? Because there are many, many brutal things that happen during Tony's life.
There are. One of the key aims with the book, and I'm sure Tony would say this, is the very last thing we wanted to do was glorify the violence. And I know Tony is very aware that when he goes around giving his story, there are a group of people that will come along because they want to hear the gruesome details. They might want to see a kung fu demonstration. They want to hear the blood and the gore, and that's probably a natural thing. I think there's something within all of us that kind of is attracted to that kind of thing. So it was something to be handled very sensitively.
How did you manage to draw out of Tony stories about his youth, about his childhood? Because those were very, very traumatic, and it must have been very, very difficult to draw that from him.
It was at times. He doesn't tell his story easily. In the last couple of years, I think Tony would tell you he's been all around the world, and he's now very used to giving his story. But I think it pains him a great deal. I'm sure he wouldn't mind me saying this. And at the time when we met, and he was going through these details, and of course I was having to really drag more detail out, it was a very, very painful experience for him. So again, that was something that I had to be sensitive to. It took a little time, but I think we got there in the end.
Finally, Angela, what do you think, the last question now, what do you think the lasting impression of people is normally when they read this book?
Probably amazement. A lot of people say, is it really true? Did he really go through all that? Because as you said in the beginning, it is a bit like a James Bond story, a film or something. But the lasting impression has to be for the gospel message. And I know that's certainly what Tony and then my intention was when we wrote this book. The gospel message is very clear in there, and that's what the lasting impression has to be.